Welcome back to Police Academy Prep. This is Deputy Z, and today we will be covering the High Liability book, Vehicle Operations. There are 4 units in this chapter: vehicle inspection, proactive driving skills, principles of driving, and lights and sirens. So let's jump right into it. Operating a motor vehicle in a law enforcement setting is a dynamic and challenging task. The ability to drive in emergency mode, communicate with dispatch, and remain aware of the actions of other drivers present complexities not experienced in normal driving. This course is designed to help officers understand a vehicle's limits as well as their personal limits. An officer's awareness of the effects of psychological and physiological stressors on their driving is critical. Officers should also understand how the public views them as drivers. This course will help you develop the skills required to operate a motor vehicle safely. Basics of vehicle inspection. There are guidelines for properly inspecting your assigned vehicle. During an inspection, you will check the proper fluid levels, hoses, electrical wiring, belts, and tires. You should also inspect the vehicle's interior and exterior. Most agencies have an inspection form that all officers are required to complete when they use an emergency vehicle. The form helps officers remember what equipment must be inspected and allows them to report failing equipment. Each agency has its own policies or procedures for handling failing equipment. Some agencies may require officers to complete a report detailing the problem. Others may require officers to handle some problems themselves, such as changing a tire or a bulb or adding fluids, or to notify a particular shop that will repair the vehicle. The comment section on the inspection form is useful for all these purposes. Exterior vehicle inspection. It is essential to inspect a vehicle before taking control of it and operating it on the road. You will drive your law enforcement vehicle in extreme conditions, unlike the conditions in which you would drive a personal vehicle. Therefore, before using the vehicle, you must locate any potential problems so they can be repaired. Alright, so now we're going to check the operational readiness of the exterior of the vehicle. For personal safety, perform inspections before and after every use of the vehicle. When you fail to inspect a vehicle properly, you may miss potential safety hazards. Failing to complete an inspection may violate agency policies. There is potential for liability if something happens because of a vehicle problem, especially if inspection and correction could have prevented that problem. Before using a vehicle, inspect its exterior to identify any damage. Conduct a quick visual examination of the vehicle's body and undercarriage and look for the following: scratch paint, dents that are more obvious signs of contact with another object, missing or broken light covers that could prevent hazards, damaged or malfunctioning emergency equipment, your sirens, light bars, emergency lights, etc., broken or cracked glass that could injure you or impair vision, broken or cracked mirrors that could impair vision, dirty windshield, foreign objects such as tree limbs, road debris, things like that trapped under the vehicle, foreign objects under the undercarriage other than natural objects or road debris. For example, you got explosives or anything like that could be under your vehicle. And the last one being fluid leaks visible on the ground under the vehicle. Then we move on to tires and rims. Inspection of the vehicle's exterior also includes its tires and rims. Tires should be checked for uneven wear that may result from improper balance or alignment, overinflation, or underinflation. These problems can make a vehicle difficult to handle. Tire inflation is measured by PSI, which is pounds per square inch. Again, that's in bold here. Tire inflation is measured by PSI. I'm assuming most of you know that already, but that's probably a test question there. Proper PSI ensures tires are inflated at or above the manufacturer's recommended level. You can find the recommended PSI in your vehicle's door jamb. If tire wear bars are even with the tread surface, the tires will not dissipate fluids. Embedded foreign objects can deflate or blow out a tire. Do not pull out the object. Instead, have the dealer or maintenance personnel handle a removal. The dealer or maintenance personnel should also look at any bulges on the sidewall. Cuts in a tire can cause a blowout and should be observed and addressed. You should also inspect the rims on the vehicle for dents, cracks, or damage to the bead. If the front tire fails, the vehicle may lose traction. You may have difficult steering, feel vibration of the steering wheel, and feel the vehicle pulling in the direction of the affected tire. If the rear tire fails, the vehicle may also lose traction and pull in an unpredictable direction. I remember that being a test question, so just remember, if your front tire fails, you lose traction, you have difficulty steering, you feel the vibration, and it's pulling in the direction of the affected tire. So if you think about this, if you're driving and your driver's side front tire pops, you're going to go to the left. You're going to go to the driver's side. Now, if a rear tire fails, you'll pull in any position. So most likely you'll fishtail and you'll swing and you'll go based on your brakes and surrounding environmental factors. So just keep that in mind. Front tires, just think when you're driving in your car, if a front tire fails, you're going in that direction. If any of you ever lost a tire or anything like that. like that. So that was definitely a test question that I had. Under the hood, a good-looking exterior does not guarantee proper vehicle operation. Do not drive your vehicle without also checking under the hood. Make sure that all vehicle fluids are at the manufacturer's recommended levels before driving the vehicle. Okay, so fluid levels you should check include engine oil, transmission fluid, brake fluid, power steering fluid, coolant reservoir, and windshield washer fluid. There was a question just kind of asking what fluid levels there are and which ones you should check. I mean, as long as you know cars on a basic level, you'll know what types of fluids there are. Obviously, there's no blinker fluid, right? Hoses, wires, and belts are essential for the safe operation of the vehicle and should be inspected each day before operating the vehicle. Check belts for fraying, cuts, cracks, and gouges. Examine hoses for dry rot, cracks, holes, bulges, and leaks. Check wires for fraying, corrosion, cracked, or missing insulation and exposure. So that was a test question here too. So it might say if you're checking your belts, what are you looking for? You're looking for fraying, cuts, cracks, and gouges. You're not looking for dry rot. You're not looking for corrosion, because corrosion would be under wires, where dry rot would be under hoses. And your belts, you have your fraying, your cracks, and gouges. So kind of know, based on your belts, your hoses, and your wires, what you're looking for with those. The communications and emergency equipment installed in a law enforcement vehicle puts a tremendous strain on the battery. Check the battery for proper operation. The inspection should include terminal connections, water level, and signs of damage to the battery's exterior. Another question you might have is maybe, when should you check whatever they ask on your vehicle? I mean, if you're struggling on the answer, it's probably daily, right? As you see from everything I'm reading, they're saying to check daily. Is that realistic? Being on the road, me being on the road for a year now, that's not realistic. But for the sake of the test, keep that in mind. Before using the vehicle, inspect its interior. So as you see, before using it every day, that's the answer, right? This is essential to ensure safe operation while driving. Keep in mind that loose items like briefcases, flashlights, coffee cups, etc. May stop abruptly. Unsecure items become severe hazards to you. Make sure all equipment is stowed and properly secured. So I feel like with this chapter specifically, you really got to have that common sense when it comes to driving. And if you come across a question that you're not sure the answer on, just put yourself in a vehicle, your personal vehicle, and think, okay, if I'm driving and this isn't secured, is it going to hurt me, right? If I'm driving and I see a check engine light, should I stop? Yes, right? So just put yourself in the shoes of your personal vehicle and just use kind of common sense when it comes to a lot of these questions. Always inspect everything or make sure everything's okay. Do we do that in real life? No, but for the sake of the test and the exam, that's what it's for. So always check seats for tears or other damage before and after every shift and after every transport. Check under the back seat for possible weapons or contraband a suspect may have left in the car. That's a pretty good one. I mean, are you going to do that every day in real life? No, but I have heard from fellow officers and stuff where they have found a bunch of Molly pills, little bags of cocaine afterwards. And if you do get consistent with checking every day, then you can actually go back and drop PC on that person for those drugs. Because you can say in that PC, I check my vehicle every day or after every transport. This was not in there before I transported it, and I found it after the fact. Always check seats. I did that one right there. Make sure your rear mirror is securely attached, it's cracked or not broken. Test communication equipment to make certain that you can make and receive audio transmissions. Obviously, we carry those in our body. Make sure your windows roll up, your doors operate, make sure your gauges are okay, your gas and battery gauges. After the initial inspection, start the vehicle's engine and check windows and doors for proper operation. So this brings me to another question I recall. Everything I read previously is your initial inspection. So you're talking about your hoses, your wires under the hood, your seats, are things secured properly, is the back seat clean? Those are your initial inspection. And then you have your, what do you do when you basically start the engine? So when you start the engine, you're checking your windows, you're checking your doors, you're checking for sounds, smells, anything along those lines, which, like I said, is back to common sense, right? You don't check your windows when the car is off because you can't. So like I said, if you come across a question like this, just put yourself in your shoes in the car. Let's see. After completing this check, you could turn off the engine. Rear cargo area and trunk. When the rear cargo area, trunk, or trunk bed, and inspect its contents. Inside should be a spare tire, vehicle jack, tire tool, and assorted equipment for use on duty. Again, this was another question as well. What do you check in the rear cargo area? Like I said, go back to your personal car. You have your spare tire, you have the jack, you got things like that, right? You have all your equipment. Make sure everything's properly restrained. Shifting equipment can be dangerous. Remember that long or protruding equipment, like long guns, maybe your crowbar, do not face them sharp end towards you, because if you do get slammed from behind and maybe you have a smaller car or a semi hit you from behind, you want that crowbar to be, let's just say, horizontal, so that way when it gets smashed, it just moves forward. But if it's vertical, then it might impale you right through the back, right? So keep that in mind as well. I believe that was a test question about long or protruding equipment. How should you store it? So you store it side to side, not front to back. So that's what it's saying right here. So if that question comes up, you always store it side to side, not front to back. Like I said, common sense, front to back. You get in an accident, it'll impale you. Or maybe not even you, it'll impale the passenger who's in your back seat 6 inches from your crowbar that's sticking right behind his back, right? All right, then we move on to proactive driving skills. Enhanced observation and driving skills will help you when driving innocent vehicles and carrying out your duties. While you cannot predict every driver's actions or what hazards you may encounter, you must be prepared to react. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's guide, Countermeasures at Work, lists the following tips you should follow to prevent accidents. So again, that's the NHTSA, which is the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. That might have been a question where they give you, 4 random mix up of those words. Just try to remember those in order. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. It's not National Road Traffic Safety Administration. It's National Highway. It's not Florida Highway Traffic Safety, etc. Learn to recognize driving situations that can be hazardous. Assume other drivers will make errors. Adjust speed, position, direction, and attention to be able to maneuver safely if a hazard develops. Scan far enough ahead to be able to react safely to approaching situations. Scan frequently to the side and rear for passing or approaching vehicles, and scan thoroughly before changing speed or direction. You must use your senses to detect and verify a potential hazard or problem and be prepared to react to another driver's actions or to road hazards. If you determine that a safety hazard exists, pull the vehicle off the road to a safe location and notify dispatch, also known as public safety telecommunicator. So again, I don't know if it's on this exam, but it's probably somewhere on one of the exams. Just obviously know that dispatch is also your public safety telecommunicators. Also follow your agency policies and procedures for handling the vehicle problem. Now we move on to vision. Vision supplies about 90 to 95% of incoming data to a driver and helps with detecting and avoiding hazards. That was a test question as well. Again, vision supplies 90 to 95% of all incoming hazards and helps with obviously avoiding them. Several of the following components of vision may affect the ability to operate and control a vehicle. So these are all in bold here. These were test questions. Study them all because you might get 2 of them, 3 of them, all of them, some of them, right? So you have, so these are components of vision may affect your ability to operate. So you have acuity. That is sharpness of vision, how acute you are. You have depth perception. We all know what that is, being able to judge distance. Peripheral vision, which is the ability to basically see everywhere, above, below, to the sides. We all know what peripheral vision is. You have your color vision, the ability to distinguish colors, and night vision, clearly in the darkness. So those are pretty giveaway. None of them were really confusing except maybe acuity. But as long as you know the other ones, you know acuity. Environmental and physical conditions, alertness, and aging are factors that affect vision. That was a test question as well, so just keep that in mind. Most likely this came up in a question where it gave you those 4. Maybe the second one gave you physical conditions, alertness, and acuity are factors that affect the vision. Obviously, acuity doesn't fit there, right? So just kind of remember those. The physical conditions, alertness, and aging affect your vision. You should get your eyesight checked regularly and correct any vision problems with lenses before operating a vehicle. Other factors, including vehicle speed and glare from the sun or other lighting sources, may also have an impact on your ability to see. So a question come up with, say, what are other factors that can affect being able to see? You have your glare, you have your lighting sources, etc. Window tint is another one, reducing visibility. And keep in mind that approaching a vehicle with heavily tinted windows is a safety hazard for law enforcement. So that'll probably be a question as well. A possible question where, what would be a safety hazard for law enforcement? They might say headlights. They might say other environmental factors. They could say a person standing by, and then they might say heavily tinted windows. Obviously, that's the answer. You may frequently encounter a variety of road hazards. Pedestrians crossing streets are unlikely points. At unlikely points may require a driver's immediate attention. I will say in real life, this happens more than anything. People just walk in the middle of the road. Bicyclists and motorcyclists share traffic lanes with other vehicles and sometimes fall. Skateboarders, roller skaters, striking large animals, cars suddenly stopping and swerving, animals at dusk or night, such as possums and stuff like that. In real life, if you see something like that that's on the smaller side, run it over. It's not really in your best interest to swerve because now you're hitting other cars versus hitting a smaller animal. Improperly parked vehicles that block the roadway and vehicles that suddenly pull into traffic are dangers, and roadway obstruction, surface flaws, debris, fluid, your potholes, etc. Then we have hearing. The sense of hearing helps you locate the source of sounds that may indicate a problem with a vehicle, a suspicious incident, or a crime. So now we're moving into hearing. We went from vision now to hearing. Several factors can make the source of a sound difficult to find, such as whether the driver's windows are open or closed, surrounding buildings, etc. When you are unsure where a noise is coming from, visually scan the surroundings to help you locate the source and direction of the sound. So they might say, what's the best way to locate a sound? And that will be visually scanning. Driving with the driver's side window down helps you hear and see hazard situations, such as people who need help, crimes in progress, suspicious activity. Driving with the windows down also helps alert you to other emergency vehicles, such as fire trucks, rescue vehicles, and law enforcement responding to the same scene. I will say, for real practical use, usually when I'm driving up to a scene, I will roll down the window before I get there, maybe like half a quarter mile or so, maybe down the block. I'll roll it down because your victim might be running away, your suspect might be running away, you can hear, see, screaming, cars moving, bushes rustling, you might hear that. That's always good, and just obviously make sure you roll up your window when you get closer. So I kind of roll it down. As I'm arriving up on the scene, my fingers are already rolling up the window. Now we're moving on to smell. So again, when it comes to driving, you have vision, hearing, smell, and touch. So those are kind of your 4 things here that you're going to need to know for the exam, for the chapter test, because that's probably going to be there. When it comes to driving, what are your 4 things, right? And it's really your senses. So let's talk about hearing here. We did that one. So let's do smell. You can use your sense of smell to detect many problems. If you detect an unusual odor while operating a vehicle, determine whether the odor is coming from the patrol vehicle or from outside. Look for smoke or an odor source. If the odor is not as readily identified as smoke, gasoline, or propane, exit the vehicle and call for additional resources to investigate. Obviously, smell something, say something, right? Be aware that a fire can start if the vehicle is left running while parked over a grassy area for an extended period of time. This is usually caused by the extreme heat from a catalytic converter. The odor of bitter smoke is usually the first sign of a grass fire. So this might be a test question. What can cause a fire under your car? Parking in the grass. Okay, now we have touch. Touch can help you detect problems that affect the vehicle operation control. For example, the steering wheel vibrating excessively, or the vehicle may have a steering or tire problem. If the steering wheel pulls in one direction, the vehicle may have an alignment problem. When you feel in your hands and feet and other parts of your body can provide feedback about the handling. When you are driving and sense something unusual, you should determine whether it is a safety concern by applying the brake pedal to verify that the brakes work, checking the steering, and looking for smoke or signs of an engine fire. Observation skills. Describe techniques that can enhance or impede awareness. Several techniques can enhance your ability to be a keen observer, aware of your surroundings. Driving at or below the posted speed limit is helpful for observing and responding appropriately to the environment. Making adjustments to your meal times and lifestyles will help you be more alert on the job. Some adjustments include eating smaller meals more frequently throughout the day and getting enough rest and sleep before a shift to avoid drowsy driving. So if you have any questions on observation skills, that's eating properly, getting enough sleep, etc., because that might be a test question. Then we go to some temporary factors can weaken a driver's observation skills. These include stress, emotions, fatigue, and frequent shift changes. Prescription and over-the-counter drugs and poor driving habits can also have an effect on observation skills. So that could be a test question as well. What are other things that can affect observation and driving skills? Reaction times, etc. would be drugs, stress, fatigue, distractions, etc. Identify medical conditions that may impact observation. Medical conditions such as high blood pressure, diabetes, heart conditions, or epilepsy may also impair observation skills. So that could be a test question there as well. A lot of these are common sense, right? So if they ask you a question on what would impair observation skills, I just gave you a whole bunch, right? I gave you drugs, stress, emotions, fatigue, shift changes, high blood pressure, diabetes, heart conditions, epilepsy. I mean, these are kind of common sense. I'm assuming if they give you 4 options, one of them is going to be the right one, obviously. The other 3 are going to be some weird things that don't exactly make sense, right? You know, if they're giving you a medical condition, that's probably one of them. If they're giving you drugs or stress, then there's your easy answer there. Okay, so road and weather conditions. Officers are likely to encounter potential hazards due to road and weather conditions that can affect a vehicle's operation. Observation skills and techniques can also help officers spot and react to road hazards. You will encounter road surface abnormalities that can be hazardous if you do not know how to handle or correct the hazard. Such hazards include construction areas, other vehicles, intersection debris, fluids, wet surfaces, standing water, etc. When you see fluid on the road, slow down and try to avoid driving over or through the hazard. I believe that was a test question I had as well. So if you see fluid on the road, what do you do? Do you drive through it? Do you go around it? Do you run off the road? Do you brake and stop in the middle of the road? The question here is slow down. You try to avoid it. If you can't avoid it, then you go through it. You don't clip it. If you're going to hit something, you go straight through it. Potholes and sinkholes, curbs, and railroad tracks can be hazardous, especially if you encounter them unexpectedly. When you cannot avoid striking or driving over an obstacle, try to strike it at a slight angle with free rolling tires. So this is definitely going to be a test question. If you are, like I said, if you are going to hit something, or you're going to drive over it, you strike it at a slight angle with free rolling tires. So that's going to be the question. How would you strike it? The question is going to specifically be either free rolling tires, slight angle, or most likely both, slight angle with free rolling tires. So what that basically means is free rolling tires is you're not pressing on the brake, you're not pressing on the gas, and obviously a slight angle, you're going to have it at a slight angle because most likely what's going to happen is it's going to jerk your tires. So if you have it at a slight angle, then it should jerk you back straight, potentially. So slight angle and free rolling tires, that's definitely a test question there. If 2 or more vehicle tires roll from a paved surface onto an unpaved surface, you should not attempt to return to the paved surface by abruptly turning the steering wheel. This can cause the vehicle to flip or cross several traffic lanes. Instead, decelerate and steer as straight as distance allows. After reducing speed, firmly grip the wheel and steer smoothly and steadily back onto the roadway. 100% a test question. That could even be a SOCE style question, where they kind of basically ask, hey, if your 2 wheels are off, you're on the side, whether it's the grass or the median, what do you do? And basically you take your foot off the brake, you take it off the gas, you continue driving until you get to a slow enough speed that you can safely merge back on. Because if you just yeet right or left, then you're going to flip, you're going to cross. That's when you see those videos online where people cross like 6 lanes of traffic and then fly back the other way. That's overcorrecting, oversteering, and your wheels spinning out. So they might try to confuse you with this type of question on your chapter exam by saying, oh, if one wheel is off, what do you do? And then one of the options is reduce speed, firmly grip the steering wheel, steer smoothly, and you're like, oh yeah, that's the answer because that's what I read. But remember, it's 2 wheels. So I know, at least with our chapter exams, we got a lot of trick questions like that where you know the right answer and you know what they're looking for, but they're purposely trying to trip you up. So just remember, 2 wheels off the road, that's when you have to decelerate and then steer smoothly back onto the roadway. You should always watch the road, look ahead, and try to anticipate what kind of traction your tires will have on the surface they are approaching. While driving, you may encounter concrete, asphalt, clay, dirt, gravel, sand, or brick roadways. Vehicles respond differently to each of these surfaces, and you need to practice driving on each of them to know how your vehicle drives under those conditions. Which, I guess, good luck, because when are we on a course that has all 7+ types of those type of driving conditions? Weather. In Florida, you are likely to encounter rain, fog, wind, and extreme bright sunshine. As a law enforcement officer, you may have to be on the road when most other people would be able to avoid it, such as during heavy storms. Because you may have to respond to an emergency during bad weather, you need to learn how to drive safely in all types of weather, and you also need to understand how weather can affect your vehicle's performance. On a practical standpoint, if the weather's really bad, unless you're responding to assist a fellow deputy or officer that is in trouble, in which case you should be hauling ass, but safely. If it's bad weather and you're responding to a call, it doesn't matter how bad the call, your life is more important. You need to get there safely. The last thing you want to do is tie up more of your squad members because now you're involved in something that you couldn't arrive safely on. Rain and wind are weather conditions that are most likely to affect your vehicle's performance in Florida. Most likely a test question there. Rain and wind, those are the two weather conditions that are you're most likely going to encounter. Brakes often become wet when driven through deep water or heavy rain. Rain can cause a vehicle to lose traction and skid out of control. So what does rain cause? A vehicle to lose traction and skid out of control. Even a small amount of rain can cause a car to float off the road. Obviously hydroplaning. Though they are designed to disperse water, tires sometimes, hydroplane. They pull to one side or the other or may not hold at all. Try to avoid driving through water. Standing water can be deeper than you think and can cause mechanical malfunctions. So again, try to avoid driving through water if possible. Extreme wind may also affect the performance in handling the vehicle. You should keep in mind that heavy winds can blow other drivers off course or cause tree limbs or other debris to fall on your path. So wind, you have tree limbs, issues like that, and vehicles obviously swerving into your lane. Okay, officers should be able to identify types of crashes and master techniques for avoiding them. Sometimes another driver's actions or an officer's failure to recognize a hazard makes a crash unavoidable. An example is a vehicle that pulls out suddenly, forcing the officer to take evasive action to avoid a collision. Officers should be especially careful at intersections as they represent the single greatest threat to safe vehicle operation. As you can already hear from that sentence, you already know that's a test question. What is the single greatest threat to safe vehicle operation? That is intersections. And again, that is just common sense because you've got 3, 4, 5, 6 plus methods of travel. People running red lights to left and right. Again, that is intersections. Put that in your brain. That is 100% a test question. Boom. I already got you a percentage up on your test question just in that one alone. Some frequent occurring crashes include side swipes, right angle collisions, collisions with fixed objects, head-on, rear end, accidents caused by improper backing. You can take several measures to avoid a crash, such as taking your foot off the accelerator to decrease your speed, using evasive movers, or applying the brakes. Most likely a test question there. What are some measures to avoid a crash? You might get a whole bunch of weird stuff, but the answer is either decrease your speed, using evasive maneuvers, or applying the brakes, or the question might include all three of them, and that's the right answer. Steering to a safe location in the direction you want to go is also a good tactic for avoiding a crash. This was 100% a test question as well. That should be on there. It was on mine and a couple others. Steering to a safe location in the direction you want to go is how you avoid a crash. So if someone's coming from your right, if you're driving straight and someone's coming from your right, you obviously want to go left. You need to look left, steer left, drive left. That's where you want to go. I guess the reason why they say this is because some people will see a car pull out from their right and they will just stare at the car and be like, oh shit. And then where you look is kind of like a firearm. Where you look is where your gun is pointing. If you're looking at the car pulling out and all you're thinking is that car, you're going to either continue driving straight right into it or you're going to turn right into it. So again, steering to a safe location, the direction you want to go, is how you avoid a crash. Seatbelt usage. Whether it is a standard lap and chest belt or a tactical harness, you must always wear your seatbelt. Easy enough. Let me see. Any person operating a motor vehicle must be restrained by a safety belt, so the driver has to have a seatbelt. Any person 18 years or older who is a passenger in the front seat of a motor vehicle must be restrained by a safety belt when the motor vehicle is in motion. So again, 18 years or older, any person 18 years or older who is a passenger in the front seat must be restrained by a safety belt when the motor vehicle... Okay, so if you're in the passenger seat, if you're 18 or older, you have to wear a seatbelt. And then you might say, well, what about under 18? Then the next one comes in. Each passenger operating the vehicle under 18 must be restrained no matter where they are in the car. So under 18, you have to be restrained. If you're over 18 and you're in the passenger seat, obviously, or in the back, you wouldn't have to. But if you're in the front and you're any person, you have to wear a seatbelt. And again, the driver, you also have to wear a seatbelt. So passenger, driver, you have to wear a seatbelt unless the vehicle's not in motion. And then anyone under 18, you have to wear a seatbelt. Most likely a test question there. There are exceptions to this law, but almost all passengers are required to be strapped in during transport. Your agency policies will mirror this law. Seatbelts are a primary safety device. Do not rely solely on the airbags. The seatbelt may help save your life. They might have a question about what's going to help save your life. Seatbelt. What is a primary safety device in a vehicle? Seatbelts. 2 test questions you might have. If a vehicle is moving towards you in the lane of travel, examine your surroundings for potential obstacles as you act to avoid a collision or attempt to reduce its effects. You can also reduce speed to increase the time to react. Most likely a test question there. If you need to increase the time to react when an accident is coming up, what do? You brake, or you take your foot off the gas. Okay, so obviously reducing speed. Driving to the right gives the other vehicle more space and puts you in a position to drive off the road if necessary. Finally, you can drive off the road to avoid the collision. Okay. So again, if you need to avoid a collision, what could be a step? That is driving off the road. If an oncoming vehicle forces you off the road, you can potentially reduce the chances of injury by attempting to select what to hit. So this is a big one here. They're going to put them here in order. This was a test question that I remember. These are listed from least to most dangerous. So if you're going to go off the road and you're going to hit something, choose what to hit. Don't just let fate take its toll. All right. So in order, you want to hit soft objects first. So bushes, small trees, debris, fences, things that your car is going to bust through and going to help slow you down. The next least dangerous is objects moving in the same direction, including another vehicle. So if you're going off the road and you got a vehicle go off the road next to you, hey, you might want to turn a little bit into that vehicle, ride up with them, and that'll help slow you guys down. Most likely vehicles. And then obviously your last option is a fixed object, such as a tree, a sign, or a parked car. So if you're going to run into something, don't make it something that's going to make you stop on a dime. Do something that's going to slow you down in phases. So obviously soft objects, debris, things like that. Then moving in the same direction, and then a fixed object. If you cannot avoid hitting a fixed object or an oncoming vehicle, you should hit the object with the side of the vehicle rather than head-on, glancing off the object or vehicle. Let me go over this one right here, this sentence, because they put a real trick question in there for me. I remember specifically getting this one wrong. If you cannot avoid hitting a fixed object or an oncoming vehicle, it was about an oncoming vehicle, the question, you should hit the object with the side of the vehicle rather than head-on, glancing off the object or vehicle. One of the answers was hit, this is the one I chose, was hit like the front side of the vehicle, like let's just say the side headlight, and then glancing off the side. That's what I chose because I remember, the side of the vehicle, right? But I guess the reason why it was mostly wrong is because you still hit the front of the vehicle. You hit that front initial portion. Because I thought, okay, if you're just clipping the side headlight, you're going to then glance to the side and go about your crash. But I guess they consider that still the front. So if you're going to hit an oncoming vehicle, hit it with the side. I think the correct option was like I don't know if it was side swiping or if it was hit like the back side or something like that. It was a trick question. I don't remember the correct one, but it was a little more trickier than that. But I thought, because it literally read hit the light on the corner and then glance off the side, and I'm like, that's exactly what it says right here in the book, right? But just keep that in mind. No part of the front, only the side. The 3-second rule. The 3-second rule establishes a minimum safe following distance for all vehicles and provides space and time for the driver to react to potential hazards. So just remember the 3-second rule. It is a minimum safe following distance for all vehicles in order to react to hazards. This rule applies at the posted speed limit when weather and road conditions are good. Use the 3-second rule at any speed to determine if you are at a safe distance from the car in front of you. So again, how that basically means is you're driving along, the car in front of you is whatever distance it is, you see it past the tree. It passes the tree, then you count 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. Then you pass that tree. That means if the weather is perfect, everything is good, normal driving conditions, the roads aren't wet, you are at a safe distance. To follow the principles of the 3-second rule, watch, everything I just explained. So then we have the 6-second rule, which I'm assuming you can deduct what this is. This is when the driving conditions are not optimal, aka it's raining, the roads are wet, it's windy, people are driving crazy, maybe it's traffic, etc., etc. Then you have a 6-second rule. So just keep that in mind. They might ask a question, hey, if conditions are not so great and this and that, what rule do you use? A 3 or second rule? 6-second rule. Okay. Move on to the next section, handling principles of driving, handling characteristics. This section explains how physical forces affect your ability to control and safely maneuver to a law enforcement vehicle. Remember that vehicles react to driver input, road conditions, and natural forces. The tires of most law enforcement vehicles rest on 4 6-inch squares known as the tire contact patch. You already know that's a test question 100%. The tire contact patch is the space of tire that is actively touching the ground at all points. Obviously, there are 4 of them, and they are 6-inch squares. So like I said, 4 tires on the ground. There's 6 inches worth of it at all times. 6 inches of your tire is touching the ground. All the factors just listed affect those 4 small areas and what happens to the vehicle. So basically, your whole vehicle rides on 4 6-inch squares. And what are those known as? The tire contact patch, correct. Vehicle motion. There are 3 types of vehicular motion: pitch, roll, and yaw. Pitch occurs during acceleration or braking and causes the transfer of the vehicle's weight from front to rear or rear to front. Test question, it's in bold. Pitch. That is forward and backwards. If you need to think about it, think about a pitcher throwing a ball. He's either throwing it forward and then the catcher's throwing it back. So that is you're pitching it forward or the catcher's throwing it back to you. That is pitch. Then you have roll. That occurs when turning. This shifts the vehicle's weight from side to side. So if you're going to stop, drop, and roll, you're not going to roll forward. That's a somersault. You're going to roll right and left, right? So just think of stop, drop, and roll. You're going to roll right and left. So again, you're making a left, and you feel your body going right with the centrifugal force, which we'll get into here shortly. Then you have yaw. It is the transfer of the vehicle's weight causing an end-for-end motion, resulting in the vehicle turning 180 on a horizontal plane. That's super complex for basically saying you spin out, okay? So let's say you're hydroplane and your car you're driving straight and it ends up spinning. So if you're doing spinning, it is yawing. Real no way to remember that, so just remember the other ones. Pitch is forward and backwards. Roll, stop, drop, and roll, side to side. And then yaw is you're doing a 180, 360, 270, whatever you want to do in a circle. Then you have stability. Vehicular stability affects the degree of the pitch, roll, and yaw that a vehicle experiences. A stable vehicle does not pitch and roll as easily as an unstable vehicle. Most likely a test question. Remember, stable vehicle, it just doesn't pitch and roll as easily. The center of gravity on the most stable vehicle is low and centered. So they might say, what is a stable vehicle? That is a vehicle that is low and centered to the ground. And the higher vehicle center of gravity, the lower its stability. So again, think of a large Tahoe, think of a very large truck, think of a Sprinter van. Those are high off the ground, so they are less stable. So like again, trucks and SUVs are less stable because of higher center of gravity. Then you have your Dodge Chargers and vehicles that are low to the ground. Those are lower center of gravity. They're more stable. A vehicle with a wider tracking width, like a military Humvee, is more stable. Vehicle tracking width is possibly going to be a test question. Just remember that tracking width, it means how wide the vehicle is. So you look at a Humvee and those things take up the whole lane. Those are going to be more stable versus, let's just say, your smart car that takes up less than half a lane, or a motorcycle, being dramatic here. Obviously, the thinner it is, the less stable it is. So the wider the vehicle, the more stable it is. So think of your Hummers, your Humvees. I'm trying to think of some other wider vehicles, but you get the point there. So again, that is tracking width, and that is how wide a vehicle is. Then we move on to electronic stability control, the ESC. It helps drivers maintain control of their vehicle during extreme steering maneuvers, even when the vehicle nears or exceeds the limits of road traction. So again, electronic stability control, these are test questions. Electronic stability control helps drivers maintain control during extreme steering. So when you think of electronic stability control, think of stability. How do you keep your vehicle stable? It is with the steering wheel. Then you have your traction control system. Is typically a secondary function of the ESC designed to prevent loss of traction. So again, think electronic stability, think of your steering wheel. Then you have TCS, traction control system, is part of ESC, and it is just loss of traction. So remember, it's easy. Traction control, loss of traction. But just remember that I think the question for me was framed as, which one is a secondary function of the ESC? Or it might have been a true or false, where it was like, is the traction control system its own system, or is it a secondary function of the ESC? Is it part of the ESC? The answer is it is part of the ESC, and it is a secondary function. So first you have your electronic stability control and your steering wheel, and then you have your traction control, which is part of that helps prevent loss of traction. So electronic stability control and traction control. Weight transfer and distribution. All right. This in real quick because I'm losing battery here. All right, weight transfer and distribution. Equipment and passenger loads affect weight transfer. And of course, that's not working. Equipment and passenger loads affect weight transfer and could change a law enforcement vehicle's stability. Be sure to load. There we go. All right, sorry about that. Equipment and passenger loads affect weight transfer and could change a law enforcement vehicle's stability. So just remember, weight transfer and equipment and passenger loads are going to affect that transfer. Most likely test question there. All right. Be sure to load all equipment in such a way as to distribute weight evenly. So in your trunk, when you have all your equipment, lay it out flat. Weight transfer and distribution occur when the vehicle's speed changes and influences the vehicle's handling ability. Weight is distributed only where the tires contact the surface. The more dramatically the brakes or accelerator are applied, the more dramatic the weight transfer and its effects. Most likely a testing question there. The more you do your brakes or accelerate, the more dramatic the weight transfer. And the weight transfer is just the weight that moves inside your car. So that might be a test question asking what weight transfer is. And that is just the weight moving on those 4 tires. All right, so as a driver applies the brakes, weight transfers in the direction the vehicle is traveling, forward or backward. So obviously if you're braking, weight transfers in the direction the vehicle is traveling. So if you're reversing and you're braking, then obviously it's going backwards. If you're going forward, then the weight transfers forward. This transfer affects the distance it takes to stop the vehicle. When a vehicle accelerates, weight transfers to the rear tires, affecting acceleration and handling of the vehicle. So again, when a vehicle accelerates, weight transfers to the rear, obviously, because just think about it. You're in a car, you accelerate, your head slams backwards, that's moving backwards. Just remember, too, that weight transfer affects the distance it takes to stop a vehicle. So if you have more weight, more equipment in your car, then it's harder to stop the vehicle. Just think of, when that question comes up, think of a semi. A semi cannot stop on a dime because of all the equipment and products are holding them back of the vehicle. When a vehicle turns a corner, weight is transferred from one side to the other. So obviously, like we talked about before, when you're turning right, the centrifugal force is making you go left. All that weight is transferring left. That's your weight transfer. The transfer is more noticeable in a van, truck, or SUV, and the reason for that is why? Because a higher center of gravity. This transfer of weight can force the vehicle out of the driver's travel lane or off the road. In extreme situations, it can cause the vehicle to roll over. Think of a semi. Weight transfers towards the tires on the outside of the turn when turning a corner. So obviously, let's say you're driving straight, you make a left, the weight transfer is going to transfer right. Like I said, just put yourself in a car, you make that left turn, you go right, you're falling towards your passenger seat. All your weight is also going to go to those tires, which I'm assuming they're going to say next here is your left tires, where the weight isn't, is going to possibly lift. The front outside wheel carries the most weight. So think about driving straight. This might be a test question. You're turning left. What tire is going to have the most weight on it? And it's going to be the front passenger tire, because the car is shifting. All the weight is shifting that way. Plus, you're going straight. That's why it's going to be the front passenger tire. If you are going right, then it's going to be the front driver tire, because that's where the weight is turning into. All right. While the rear wheel on the outside of the turn carries less. Okay, right. So if we're making a right turn, which wheel is going to have the most weight? That is going to be the driver front. Which wheel is going to have the least weight? It is going to be the rear wheel on the inside. So again, if you're making a right, the most weight's going to be the driver tire, and the least weight is going to be the passenger rear. It's going to be the diagonally opposite. So either think diagonal or just put yourself in a car. You're making a right turn. If you're making a right turn, you're going to hit the door, your driver door here, which means all the weight's going to be right there in the front. And then the one that's going to have the least is the diagonal opposite one. That's going to be the passenger rear. Okay, so because of this diminished steering capability, you should not attempt to brake and steer at the same time. Always brake before turning and then steer into the turn. This could be a test question. When you're getting ready to make a turn, don't brake and turn. You need to brake till you're at a good speed, let off the brake, and then turn, which you'll get taught in your practical portion of driving. Okay, so always brake before turning and then steer into the turn. Now we're talking about turns. Okay, a radius, this is in bold, test question. A radius is the distance from the center of the circle to the outside. A turn or curve is a portion of a circle. So remember radius from geometry. Your radius is you put a dot in the middle of a circle and the distance between that dot to the outside. Okay, then you have an increasing radius. It is a turn that gets wider during the turn, much like a circle getting bigger. So again, I mean, it's increasing, so it's getting bigger. That's the simple thing right there. A decreasing radius, the opposite. You're decreasing, the turn's getting tighter during the turn. So think of a U-turn would be a decreasing radius, where one of those big round turns getting onto the highway would be like an increasing radius, where you kind of have to turn but then straighten the vehicle, turn, straighten the vehicle, versus your U-turn, you're just turning the vehicle. Then you have a constant radius. It is a turn that remains the same throughout. It's not getting wider or smaller. So think of like a perfect circle. That's going to be a constant radius. It's not getting smaller. It's not a U-turn, because that would be a what? That would be a decreasing radius. And it's not a huge, big circle on-ramp. That would be what? An increasing radius. But if you're turning in a perfect circle, think of like a roundabout. Those generally are a perfect circle. That's going to be a constant radius. An example would be a 90-degree turn, just a turn made at an intersection. So again, you're making a right turn. Those right turns are generally perfectly 90 degrees. It's nothing special. Now, if you're at like a really tight angle, like I said, a U-turn or something like that, that would be decreasing. Corner negotiating techniques. This is in bold here. An apex is the center point of any curve. So if you're making a right turn at an intersection, the apex is going to be what? The center of where that turn is. So if you're turning and you see the corner of the sidewalk where the little button to cross is, that's probably going to be your apex. That's probably going to be where the middle of the turn is. The apexing technique is how the vehicle is steered in relation to the curve's apex while maintaining your lane. The vehicle's position in relation to the curve defines the early, center, or late apexing techniques. So again, those are going to be big. I mean, they're decently simple. An early apex technique means you're turning too early. Center apex is you turn at the center, and a late apex technique is when you turn late after the turn. So early would be turning too early and potentially hitting the curb on a right turn, or not even hitting it, but you get my point. Center apexing technique would be you get to the center of the turn and then you turn, and then the late would be you're waiting till the end of it and then coming into the turn. Okay. So let's talk about the early apexing technique. Is when the vehicle is steered so it is closest to the inside of the curve before reaching the apex. So early, like I said, it's just simple. You're just turning earlier, and by turning early, you get really close to the curb. Let's say on that right turn, you get real close to the curve because you turn so early. Then we have and then what that can cause is it can cause loss of control. When you just think about it, if you're going fast, you turn too early, you're going to most likely lose control. Then you have your center apex turn, which is quite simple. You begin to make your turn at the center point. I mean, that's pretty straightforward. Then you have your late apex turn, which, remember, this is the correct one. You don't make that turn until you're later into that right turn. That you're pulling up more before you're making that right turn. The late apexing technique is when the vehicle is steered so it passes closest to the inside of the curve after reaching the apex. So again, you have your early apex, then you have your center apex. Once you reach that apex, you then go a little further, then turn. So like I said, you hit the inside of the curve after reaching the apex. This technique decreases the force enacted on a vehicle moving in a curved path, reducing the potential for loss of control. So if they ask you which technique reduces the potential for loss of control, it is the late apex. The late apexing technique in most cases is the best cornering or turning method. It allows the most room for driver error. So that could be phrased that way. What apexing technique allows the most room for driver error? Just remember late apex. That's all you need to know. You don't even remember the center. You don't need to remember the early. Just late apexing is the one to go. All the other ones are wrong. Steering has a direct relationship with vehicle dynamics, vehicle handling, and traction control. Ding, ding, ding. Possible test question. Steering has a direct relationship basically with everything of your vehicle. The speed of a vehicle and the forcefulness of steering influences these forces. Speed and steering also greatly affect the weight transfer of the vehicle. So remember, speed and steering affect weight transfer, obviously. Then you get into your understeer and oversteer. Ding, ding, ding. 100% test questions. You probably could see a few of each of them on there. Understeer and oversteer describe certain vehicle movements resulting in a loss of traction by the front or rear tires. You should not confuse the word steering in these terms with the actual movement of the vehicle's steering wheel. However, recovery from these events may require steering inputs. Remember, just because it says understeer or oversteer does not necessarily mean you steered wrong or right and you did it wrong or right in that situation. Steering is just in the word. Because understeer, oversteer has to do with braking, has to do with some steering input, has to do with no brake. It really has to do with braking, understeer and oversteer. So let's get into understeer. It is the tendency of a vehicle to turn less sharply than the driver intends. The cause of understeer may be a combination of excessive speed, lack of traction on the steering tires, and improper braking in a turn or curve. A combination of two or more of these errors can cause you to lose control. The correction for understeer is to remove the foot from the accelerator, maintain steering input, but not apply brakes, and if necessary, steer the car to a safe place and stop. So if you are coming up to a right turn, understeering is you don't steer enough. Just think about it. Understeering, under means less, right? So if you understeer, you don't turn enough, and you end up going straight into the damn building. So you're making a right at an intersection. You don't steer enough, aka understeering, and you basically continue straight at a slight rightward angle, and you either hit the car in the opposing lane, or you go off and you hit the Walgreens or the CVS on the corner. So remember, understeering, under means less. You didn't steer enough. Think about yourself in your personal vehicle. If you're making a right and you don't turn the wheel enough, you're going to continue going straight rightish. So just remember that. That helped me with remembering understeer. Under is less. Then oversteer is a tendency of a vehicle to steer into a sharper turn than the driver intends, sometimes with the loss of traction of the rear to the outside. Oversteer generally occurs at a higher speeds when the rear tire loses traction and excessive braking occurs in a turn or curve. The correction for oversteer is to remove the foot from the accelerator or brake, steer the car where desired, refrain from applying the brakes, and if necessary, steer the car to a safe place and stop. So oversteer, think about it, you're coming up to a right turn. Over means higher, aka too much. You steer too much. Think about what happens. When you steer too much, you spin out. Remember, what is spinning out is that pitch, roll, or yaw. If you got it correct, that is yaw. So let's say you turn too much, you're going to do that whole 180, that whole spin out type deal. So again, oversteer, you're steering too much. You turn way too sharp, your car might roll. You might end up popping on a wheelie or a two-wheelie. It's when the front tires have not lost traction. So remember, that's what yaw is. The front tires don't lose the traction. The back, you kind of swing out and you do the 180. So unfortunately, with understeer and oversteer, like I said, there's going to be a few questions on each of these most likely on the test. It's not one for each because there's multiple ways they can ask you this. They might just straight up ask you, what is the correction? The correction of oversteer is to remove the foot from the accelerator or brake, steer the car where desired. Where understeer, how to correct it, is to remove the foot from the accelerator and maintain steering input but not apply brakes. So think about, okay, so let's talk about understeer. Remember, understeer is less, you don't turn enough, you go straight basically. To fix that, you stop accelerating. You don't apply brakes, because if you apply brakes, you're not able to turn, because then you're gonna yaw. You're gonna do the 180. You just let your foot off the gas and you just turn. That's it. Now when we go to oversteer, the correction is to take your foot from the accelerator or brake and you steer where you want to go. Okay, so let's see here. Let me see if I can beat this dead horse a little bit more. Oversteer happens at higher speeds when the rear tires lose traction. Again, think about oversteering. You steer too much. So when you basically whip that that steering wheel to the right, and your back tires are now having no clue what to do when they're swinging out from underneath you. So you still have, so they might ask the question, what steering technique is it when you're at a higher speed and the rear tires lose traction? You might be like, holy shoot, which one is that? Just remember, if you're understeering, it can't be that, because you're basically going straight. If you're basically going straight, all your tires are fine. But if you're oversteering and your car is rolling out from underneath you, it's your back tires that are going to give you that 180, right? Let's talk about understeer here. So understeering could be a lack of traction. So let's just say you go to make that turn, and maybe you're understeering, so you're turning less, and you're going too fast, and your wheels lose traction. You can't turn if your wheels don't lose traction, so you skid. You could just skid and continue going that straight rightish like we talked about, and just hit the building of the car that way. So again, understeer is less, oversteer is more, and just put yourself in your car and think, okay, if I oversteered, aka steered more, what's going to happen? The back of your car is going to swing out. You might maybe not swing out, but you'll make that right turn, and you'll just continue turning right until you hit whatever is on the right. Understeering is you're steering less. You didn't steer enough, so you're basically still going straight to a right angle, and you're going to continue straight. So I think I beat those up pretty enough. Just remember them, because there's going to be multiple questions on each of those. Then we move into wheel tracking. This is bold. Test question. Wheel tracking causes the rear wheels to follow a tighter path than the path the front wheels traveled in a turn. So this might be confusing at first until you realize it. Once you're in your personal vehicle, let's think you're in a parking spot and you backed in, right? So now you're going to turn right to get out of your parking spot. You got vehicles on both sides. If you pull out a little bit and you start making that right turn, your front tires are going to clear the car. But as you're making that turn, you're too close, you're going to start, your back tires and maybe the back half of your car is going to start scraping along the car on your right. So just remember, that's basically what wheel tracking is. If you've ever seen imprints in the sand of a vehicle turning, you never just see 2 tracks. You always see 4, because you got your, you see 2. You don't see 1 and 2 tracks. You see 4, because you have the 2 coming from the 2 front and the 2 rear tires. So again, just think about it. You're backed in a parking spot. You're looking to make that right turn. Your front tires already cleared it, no big deal. Your back tires nailed the car to your right. Or think, if you ever made a right turn and you're driving and you've clipped that curb from your back tire and you're like, oh shoot, what? I thought I cleared it. I totally cleared it. That is what wheel tracking is. You made that right turn. You saw the whole front of your car, cleared it. You see where the curb's at, and then the back tire clips it. That is wheel tracking. When trying to avoid a fixed object, you must steer the front of the vehicle wide off the object. Again, so when you're pulling out of a parking spot, you got to pull way forward, so maybe like halfway your vehicle, or maybe the back half, and then you can make that right turn. Or if you're making a right turn in an intersection, you pull out a little further, then you make the right, so that your back tire doesn't clip. All right, here. So now we're moving on to steering the vehicle. Steering and posture. Steering is one of the most important aspects of driving a vehicle. How you sit in a vehicle is also important, because it enables you to correctly steer, accelerate, use mirrors, use proper seat position, and brake. So just seating, no big deal. Steering wheel grip. Holding the steering wheel with a firm yet relaxed grip. I believe this was a test question. They're going to ask you, how do you hold the steering wheel? They're going to say, you hold it really hard, you hold it really soft, you hold it really relaxed, or you hold it really firm. Guess what? Firm and relaxed are here. But remember, it's not just firm and it's not relaxed. It's firm yet relaxed. Kind of like how you hold your gun. You can't just get white knuckles holding your gun like they teach you in firearms. You have to hold your gun firm enough that it ain't going to fly out of your hands, but not so much that you're getting white knuckles and you're getting cramps in your fingers. The thumb should rest on the rim of the steering wheel and never hold the steering wheel too tightly. Holding the wheel tightly will cause you to tire more quickly. Obviously, if you're squeezing and shaking, you're going to get tired. You must use proper hand position and grip each time you take control of a vehicle. Hand position, fun one here. Facing the steering wheel, the top center of the wheel is in the 12 o'clock position. Okay, so your wheel is straight. Remember, you're in your car at this point. The bottom center of the wheel represents 6 o'clock. It is recommended that you place your right hand in the 4 o'clock position and in the 8 o'clock position. This hand position provides a quicker response, reduces fatigue, and reduces injury if the airbags deploy. The design of some steering wheels may require a slightly different hand position. So just remember, okay, look, you're in your personal car. Think about your steering wheel. Generally, steering wheel has three holes. It has the really big top hole, and it's got the 2 small holes. And then it has, the center bar in the middle where you can't hold, and then the center bar is directly at, 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. So the only place to really put your hands are those 2 holes at the bottom, and that is your 4 o'clock and your 8 o'clock. Remember, the question could come in more of a phrase of this. What does this hand position provide? Because you might be thinking, oh yeah, I know 4, I know 8. And then you get the question like this: which hand position provides a quicker, what does the hand position do? And you're like, oh shoot, I knew 4 and 8, but now I don't remember what it does. A quicker response, reduces fatigue, and reduces injury. So think about an airbag. If your hands are down here at the bottom, the airbag is going to blow in your face. Or if your hands are at the top of the steering wheel, it's going to blow your hands, which are bones, back into your face, destroy your eye sockets, etc. Shuffle steering. After properly adjusting the equipment, place your hands in the required position and grip the steering wheel correctly. Perform the shuffle steering technique to make a right turn and a left turn. Driving in reverse does not involve shuffle steering. Now, I'm not really going to be able to describe this because this is more of a visual type thing. Shuffle steering is basically your hands. Let's see, how can I say this? So, yeah, just wait for your instructor to explain it here. I'll go through the steps here, but it's going to be really hard to kind of visualize this unless your instructor has already shown you how. Remember this, driving in reverse does not involve shuffle steering. So if you're going in reverse, you don't shuffle steer. You do your normal thing. You put your hand in your passenger seat, you sit up a little bit, you look out your back, and you turn with your left hand, right? So just remember that. To turn right, move the hand into a 12 o'clock position at the top of the steering wheel and pull the steering wheel down in a smooth motion in a right turn. So there are 4 steps for this. I'm going to wait for your instructor to explain this one. I guess I'll run through them really quickly. Simultaneously maintain contact with the steering wheel with the left hand and slide the right hand to the 6 o'clock position. Continue to turn as the hands meet the 6 o'clock. Gripping, you move your other hand up to the 12 o'clock position, and you're always maintaining contact with the steering wheel with both hands while you're doing this. I remember on the test, they did kind of have these steps listed out. I forget how it was phrased. It's kind of confusing. Just like I said, imagine yourself in the car. Imagine turning how your instructor showed you with the shuffle steer, and just sit there and go back and forth with your hands. I'm in a car right now, so you might hear my steering wheel. Go back with your hands, slide, and figure out, okay, what makes sense. If I'm making a right turn, I put my right hand up at the 12. I slide it down, meet both hands at the bottom at the 6 o'clock, and then the left hand then goes back up to the top as my right hand meets it at 12, and both hands are now at 12. So that's kind of it right there. And obviously turning left is the same, well, it's the opposite of what we just went through. Okay. It is imperative to use this steering technique because it helps maintain control of the steering wheel, especially when the caster effect occurs. Ding, 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 that's in bold. I will say, for practical use, I didn't think I would be using the shuffle steering, but in most cases I actually do, especially when driving code, and it actually does work. It does reduce fatigue and stuff like that, so it actually is pretty good. Caster effect, ding, 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 that is bold. This is the tendency for a vehicle traveling forward to straighten from a turn when the driver releases the steering wheel. So basically, we've all done this. You make that right turn, and you kind of throw your hands off the wheel, and the whole car steering wheel goes yeet to one side or the next, and it straightens out almost automatically for you. That is the caster effect. So again, you're making a right turn, a left turn, and as you start straightening out, you basically let go. You don't let go, but you let the wheel slide through your fingers, and it kind of feels like a badass moment. Just remember that is the caster effect. The caster effect does not apply when driving in reverse. Just remember, none of this applies to driving in reverse. If you're making a turn in reverse, that wheel does not automatically go back straight. Optical drive. Okay, ding, ding, ding. Optical driving is looking in the desired direction of travel to avoid an obstacle and to avoid steering the direction of the obstacle. This is also referred to as eye targeting. So multiple ways they can ask this. This is in bold. They might phrase it as, what is optical driving? They might phrase it as, what is eye targeting? They might ask you which one is also referred to eye targeting, and you got to remember it's optical. They might say, which one is referred to as optical driving? It's eye targeting. So just remember those are interchangeable. Eye targeting, optical driving. Just remember eyes and driving/targeting. So like I said earlier, if you're driving straight and someone's pulling out right of you, you don't look at that car because you're just going to hit it. You have to look where you want to go. Like I mentioned earlier, you look where you want to go and you safely go that way. So if you want to go right, you got to look right. If you want to go left, you got to go left. Again, with the firearm, you have to look where you want your firearm to be aiming. You can't be looking to your left and your firearm out to the right, because nothing's going to happen there. So just remember that. Optical driving, eye targeting. Same thing, interchangeable, eye targeting, optical driving. Okay, proper braking. With proper braking technique, the driver presses the brake pedal with increasing pressure to slow or stop as quickly as possible. Ding, ding, ding. Test question. Proper braking. You are hitting the brake pedal with increasing pressure. So you don't just slam on it. You don't do it slowly. It is just consistent, increasing pressure. Test question, they're going to say, what is the proper braking technique? They might say slam on it. They might say go slowly. They might say slam and then release. They might say slow and then hard. Just increasing pressure. Just think about that. That's generally how it goes for most braking. As you're coming up to the red light's 100 yards. You just slowly start pressing on it until you get there. So just increasing pressure. When practicing and demonstrating proper braking, do the following. Rotate the right foot from the accelerator to the brake while leaving the heel on the floor. I don't know why that sounds so complicated. They could have just said, you're on the accelerator, you're on the gas, you slowly release off the gas, and you just move the pad of your foot to the brake pedal, and generally while keeping your heel on the floor. Place the ball of the right foot on the center of the brake pedal. Apply increase pressure on the brake pedal to stop the vehicle in the shortest distance. I mean, like I said, this chapter is really just common sense. If you've driven for more than a few years, you understand most of these concepts. You may just not have known the terms, special terms for them, right? All right, we got another bold topic here. Anti-lock braking system, ABS. For some of you with older cars like myself, you see that ABS light always on. That is the anti-lock braking system, ABS. Remember that. An enhancement to the conventional braking system, so remember it's an enhancement, called anti-lock braking system, is now standard equipment on vehicles. This type of motor vehicle braking system electronically prevents the wheels from locking by rapidly applying and releasing the brake while allowing the driver to remain in control of the steering. So basically, ABS enhanced your normal steering by automatically brake release. That way your brakes don't lock up. Because if you've ever seen brakes lock up, people will slam on the brakes on cars without ABS. They'll slam on the brakes and the brakes lock and the wheels stop, but your car just keeps sliding. In order to stop that, the ABS will release off the brakes, allow your wheels to start rolling again, and then brake again so that you can regain that traction. Because when your tires stop and you're just sliding, you have no traction. But if it releases from the brake, the wheels start rolling, they catch the traction again, and then it brakes. So that is what ABS is. It is stop, go, stop, go, stop, go, stop, go on the brakes automatically without you having to do that. So you can continue to do your, remember what we talked about, increasing pressure. You can keep doing your increasing pressure and it automatically stops and goes, stop and go. So if you ever were driving and you hit the brake kind of hardish, you feel that thump on the bottom of your feet from the brake pedal, that is the ABS activating. ABS and non-ABS work alike under normal gradual braking pressure. When an emergency hard or sudden stop is required, the two systems operate differently, like I said. ABS kind of don't necessarily activate on your normal driving, but if emergency stop, ABS will help you where the other ones don't. Okay, this is all stuff I already explained. Proper acceleration. Instructions to basically press on the gas. Position your foot properly, your right heel's on the ground. Just remember, your heel's always on the ground. You go from the brake to the accelerator. You put it squarely on the pedal. Apply pressure, apply smooth, consistent. So everything is just consistent pressure, whether it's braking or accelerating. Obviously, you don't want to lose traction by just slamming on the gas. Your wheels are spinning out, right? So your wheels spin out on that. Remember that proper acceleration is best done in a smooth, straight line using steady pressure. So that could be a test question. How do you have proper acceleration? How do you do it? You're obviously going straight, steady pressure. If the tires begin to spin, what do? You release the accelerator, and this stops the tires from spinning. You can then smoothly reapply the accelerator and move forward. All right, our last lesson here under Unit 3, vehicle cornering. Cornering requires entering an intersection safely and properly at normal driving speeds and making a 90-degree turn to the right or the left. So just remember, cornering, most likely a test question. It's just navigating a right or left turn. That's all cornering is. Officers should also recognize the apex of the turn and properly adjust the vehicle's location to fully use the available space. Remember, what apex do we use for proper apexing technique? Ding, ding, ding. That is the late apex. All right, good recap there. Humans demonstrate effective cornering by making right and left turns following these steps. You might get some bogus question that says put these in order, or what is the next step after this. I wouldn't recommend you wasting time memorizing these in order from 1 through 10. That is a lot to remember. And if they really ask you, what do you do next? Just make a really educated guess on common sense when driving. Because in my opinion, I would focus on the other important stuff in this chapter than memorizing 10 steps to properly make a right turn, right? The steps here, 1 through 10, drive straight forward, maintain a speed of 35, turn signals. They might ask, what do you do after your turn signal? That would be then to brake to a safe speed before entering the turn. So, depending on what options they give you, just kind of use common sense to be like, okay, what do I do after braking? Then I would align the vehicle in an appropriate traffic lane. Then after that, I determine the apex, obviously the late apex. And then after that, steady weight transfer, constant speed, providing steering input, shuffle steer through the curve. Look through the turn. You don't look at the turn. You will look through it into the future ahead of you, and then you accelerate when you're exiting. Just remember that too. That might be maybe more of what the question will ask is when do you begin accelerating, and that is when you're exiting the curve. Basically, once you start going straight, that's when you accelerate. Just how, remember, you brake before you start turning, you accelerate after you're exiting the turn. All right, vehicle backing. Remember this. Many crashes occur when drivers are backing up. The ability to back a vehicle safely out of a particular location or situation is an officer's safety skill. So if they ask you which of the following is an officer's safety skill, is it cornering? Is it late apexing? Is it wheel tracking? No. It is the ability to back out of a particular location or situation. So just keep that in mind. Like I said, it's one of those questions where it's like, technically they all are, yeah. But for some reason, the book says that's the officer's safety skill. If you fail to back the vehicle properly, you obviously hit a person or object. Here's a good one. The majority of law enforcement vehicle crashes are what? A result of backing into a fixed object. So that is mostly going to be a test question there. They might ask you, what is it? It might be, bad right turn, oversteering, understeering, improper wheel tracking, improper cornering. No, the majority of vehicle crashes happen from backing into a fixed object. And to recap, what is the most common or the worst type of crashes? Those are intersection crashes. Sorry, the question was more phrased. What are the most dangerous hazards when driving? Those are intersections. But the most common crashes are when we're reversing. All dynamics apply to the vehicle in any direction of travel. In reverse, drive slowly to compensate for an increase in weight transfer and decrease in your field of vision. So 2 things when backing, most likely test question here. When you're backing, you have a more increase. And I don't know if you've ever been backing and you turn sharper than you should and it feels like the whole vehicle is going to flip, but you're going like 10 miles an hour. Just remember that when you're backing, you get more of a weight transfer. And you can't see as much, so decrease in field of vision. The rear brakes, which handle a great amount of weight transfer while driving in reverse, are not as efficient as the front brakes. So again, when you're reversing, you're getting that weird quick turn, and you're like, whoa, why did I almost flip going 10 miles an hour? It's because your rear brakes are not that great. So your front brakes are better. Driving in reverse requires less steering input. Okay, test question. Driving in reverse requires less steering input to produce a larger change in direction. We all know that. You turn the steering wheel a little bit when driving backwards and you're already doing a U-turn. You're like, what the heck? I was just trying to move a couple feet. Where when you want to make a U-turn, you got to turn the wheel 3 times, right? But hypothetically, if you're backing up and you wanted to make a U-turn, you turn the wheel maybe half, maybe one, maybe once. So just keep that in mind. Most likely a test question there. Large or quick steering movements may cause you to lose control of the vehicle. You will find this evident when driving the tactical backing course. You must demonstrate effective backing of a law enforcement vehicle. When backing, perform the following steps. Press the brake with the foot. Put the transmission in reverse. Turn the upper body to the right, like I said. Lift up a little bit. Put your arm on the passenger seat. Look to the rear window, scan the area behind the vehicle. How to steer in reverse with your left hand while slowly accelerating and maintaining control of the steering wheel. Next step would be place the left hand on the 12 o'clock position, obviously at the top of your steering wheel. Your upper body is turned, release the brake, slowly accelerate. Back the vehicle while steering using the left hand in a smooth motion. When driving in reverse, consider the option of using mirrors. Always back slowly except in an emergency. And our last unit here. Although only 1/3 of all driving is done at night, more than half of all fatal crashes occur during hours of darkness. This is a test question. 1/3 of all driving is done at night, aka not a lot, but more than half of deadly crashes occur obviously darkness. Again, this chapter is very common sense. You just have to recognize that and apply it. This happens because drivers believe that they can drive as fast as night as they can during the day. Speed limit is 45 at night as it is during the day, so why can't I drive the same speed at night? Obviously, perception, false confidence, reduced visibility, you got more hazards on the road. Identify types of sensory influences the driver may experience at night. So, overdriving, these are test questions here, almost all of these. You have overdriving vehicle headlights, reaction distance, field of vision, loss of visual cues, glare, and emergency lights. So, we're going to go through them here. So, overdriving of vehicle headlights. The most common night driving error, this is the most common overdriving of vehicle headlights, is to overdrive the distance the vehicle's headlights project. So, basically means you're driving too fast than what you can see ahead of you. Meaning that as soon as you see something with your headlights, you're already going too fast. By the time you brake, you will hit it no matter what. This is going to be possibly a test question here in regards to overdriving. Vehicle headlights should reveal a person 450 feet away with the high beams, and a distance of 150 feet away from the low beams. Unfortunately, these are tough numbers to remember. You just have to put them on a flashcard and drill it into your head. So if you have your normal low beams on, you can see 150 feet ahead. When you have your high beams on, you should be able to see 450 feet ahead. When increasing speed, you may not be able to stop your vehicle within the visible area, like I said. High speeds increases stopping distance and decreases reaction time. That could be a test question as well in regards to overdriving vehicle headlights. Is when you're going high speed, you obviously can't stop as quickly, so it increases stopping distance and decreases your reaction time because you're going so fast you just now saw it. Then we have reaction distance. Reaction time remains the same whether driving during the night or day. You still pressing the brake the same amount as you would in the day. However, the lack of light increases the time required to initially observe a hazard. So you might be driving at night, and you're like, what is that? What the heck is that? And you're like, oh shit, there's a deer in the road, right? Where on the flip side, if it's day, you see the deer quarter mile up, and you're like, okay, all right, I see the deer. Let's give it some time to cross. You see the ducks crossing the road. You let them cross in front of you. That is your reaction distance. So it's always the same no matter how you're driving, but it's just the light that affects how long it takes you for your brain to process what the heck is in the road and what's in front of you. Then we have field of vision. At night, peripheral vision decreases. Less light narrows the field of vision. Again, common sense. If it's at night, your peripheral, all of your vision is decreased, and your field of vision is narrowed. Loss of visual cues. At night, it is easy to lose many visual cues that are available during the day, which lowers the ability to judge distance and the speed of oncoming traffic. So again, visual cues, whether that's road signs like, hey, warning, there's a sharp turn up here, or there's a car coming, but you can't use your depth perception because it's nighttime, right? Emergency lights. When driving in emergency mode, emergency lights can increase the amount of glare. The high intensity emergency lights easily reflects off objects. So again, with emergency lights, the question might come up with that, what's the issue that comes with emergency lights? And the correct answer would be glare. Okay, techniques that improve vision at night. Reducing speed. Common sense. Look off to the shoulder of the roadway to protect night vision while using the white line of the edge of the road for guidance. So, I don't know if you've ever been in a heavy rainstorm, or like I said, someone has high beams on, they're coming directly at you. You look down and to your right and you watch the side of the road. That line, the white line on the side of the road, you watch that and you stay as close as you can at a safe distance like you're supposed to. So just remember that. Dim the headlights for oncoming traffic so you're not blinding them. Use low beams when driving in fog or smoke because you will get glare reflecting from the water in the fog. So continue to use your low beams. And then reduce glare by controlling all interior lights. Don't have lights on. Alright, emergency mode. The decision to operate a law enforcement vehicle in emergency mode is one that an officer must never take lightly. Driving in emergency mode can place you and the public at risk. Responding in emergency mode or pursuing a vehicle is among the most dangerous driving situations because officers may experience psychological and physiological effects. So again, emergency mode is among the most dangerous driving situations. So just remember that, most likely a test question. You must follow specific Florida laws that relate to the operation of emergency vehicles. Individual agency policies can add further restrictions. So just, refer to your agency. After deciding to drive in emergency mode, an officer must be continuously concerned about certain safety factors while responding. So when you're driving emergency mode, you don't just turn that switch and say, oh, I'm in emergency mode, that's what I'm doing now. No, you have to monitor traffic, you have to monitor people on the road, you have to monitor environmental conditions. Is it raining? Is it wet? You might have to decrease speed, increase speed, turn off emergency mode. You have to continually be evaluating whether or not you should be driving the way you're driving. Many concerns accompany operating the vehicle in emergency mode. Remember to always control your vehicle by using proper steering, braking, accelerating. Let's see here. Responding to an emergency call causes stress, which can lead to many psychological and physiological reactions. The psychological stress in an emergency call may cause you to exceed your ability or your vehicle's ability in trying to catch the violator at any cost or get there before anyone else. Remember, your life is important. Don't rush. Rush, but don't rush. Identify possible physiological effects on the driver in emergency mode. Test question here. Physiological effects are the measurable changes to normal body functions. So remember, physiological is tunnel vision, selective hearing, heart rate, time distortion, loss of spatial awareness, loss of fine motor skills. So physiological are like changes in your body functions. That's how you remember physiological. It's your body functions. Okay. So like you said, when have your gun out, all you see is that little, they always say all you're going to see is that little pinhole. You're not going to see what's happening right and left of you. That is physiological effects. Several techniques help officers respond safely in emergency mode. You must use all available emergency equipment properly. You are responsible for ensuring a safe response. Make decisions about the use of lights based on the response to the call, not on extraneous factors such as concerns about waking people during the night. Screw everyone else. It doesn't matter. If you're responding, you need lights and sirens to protect yourself and to get there safely. Remember that a siren is not a protective shield. That could be a test question. The siren does not mean that people hear you. They might have radios on, air conditioning, windows up. They might have soundproof cars. It happens all the time. I'll be driving behind somebody. I'm trying to get around them, and they have no clue that I got full sirens, full lights, and I'm 1 foot behind their bumper. They got no clue. You must approach intersections correctly, yielding or stopping when the situation warrants to ensure that you act with due regard for the safety of others when requesting right-of-way. Good thing is to make eye contact with other drivers at an intersection, and that's a big one. You'll notice when you try to make eye contact with somebody and they're just looking straight, you already know they got no clue you're there. They're going to be busting through the intersection. Maintain proper following distances. Don't follow too closely. Because this could be a test question. If you follow too closely, the person in front of you might not see your lights. So think about a car right on your ass. All you're seeing is maybe their front headlights and their windshield. They're not seeing your lights on top of the car. So just keep that in mind. Always offset your vehicle to the left of the available roadway, but within your lane. That makes your vehicle more visible. So if someone's, like I said, if there's too close behind you, you're not going to see. But if you're off to the left or technically off to the right, their side view mirrors, they're going to see the lights. So that's good to keep in mind. All right, pursuit considerations. The goal of pursuit is to apprehend a fleeing violator. You cannot control the violator's driving or the route the violator takes. While your own driving will be a response to the violator's actions en route, you should never let a violator's driving dictate your own. So if he's driving crazy and erratic, you do not drive crazy and erratic. You continue to follow cornering, wheel tracking, weight transfer, late apexing, right? All of these things that help you drive safely. The offender's not going to be doing that. So he might get away initially, but that's generally why they get into car accidents, because they don't have the training we have. An officer's decision to initiate a pursuit depends on the officer's knowledge of their agency policies and the Florida statutes, as well as the conditions and circumstances at the time. So you might be able to chase this guy, but it might be sleeting, hailing, raining, windy, the roads are wet. If it's a stolen car, if it's a property crime, is it really worth you potentially killing somebody, being held on trial, potentially going to prison, all because of some dumb offender stealing a car that the insurance is paying out anyway. So that's kind of what they're trying to say here. Pursuit. This is in bold. Test question. Pursuit is an active attempt by driving an authorized emergency vehicle with the equipment activated to apprehend occupants of a moving vehicle if the driver or such occupant's vehicle increases vehicle speed, takes other invasive actions, or refuses to stop to avoid apprehension. So basically, obviously, you're chasing a vehicle because they don't want to be stopped. That's what pursuit is. It's an active attempt by an authorized vehicle. Be aware of your duties to the public as they relate to emergency and pursuit driving. Obviously, like I said, you're not going to drive through a crowded park or a school zone where kids are crossing the street. It's better to let them get away than running over 3 kids. You will not get out of that one. You will be screwed. Court cases address officers' duty to care for the public while operating law enforcement vehicles. Know this for the exam. DeShaney v. Winnebago. The U.S. Supreme Court stated that an officer or agency has no duty to guarantee a person's safety unless a special relationship exists between law enforcement and that person. Basically, what that means is we don't have to, if the person we're chasing that we're authorized to chase and the conditions are good, if they kill themselves, then that's on them. That's basically what it's saying is you're not at fault because the fleeing felon nailed a tree and got decapitated. You're not going to be at fault. Let's see. But you will be at fault if you have that person in custody. So again, if you have someone in your back and you're chasing a car and you get an accident and they die, they're in your custody, you have that responsibility. Right, so if someone's in your custody, they're under your control. You are responsible for them at that point. But when you're chasing somebody, you're not responsible for them because you haven't yet put your hands on them. Pursuit situations generally mean that you begin a pursuit but have no duty to continue it. So like I said, once you start, it's not a switch. You can turn it off at any point based on environmental factors, based on your vehicle conditions, based on other things like I've explained. When you terminate a pursuit, it is unlikely that you will be liable if the violator continues to drive recklessly. That is Pinellas Park v. Brown. So if you're chasing a guy and you're like, know what, school zone's a mile ahead, I really don't think it's safe. You go to the radio and say, hey, I'm terminating pursuit, school zone ahead, I'm turning around. You turn around and then come to find out 10 minutes later, he went 100 miles an hour through a school zone, killed 3 kids. You will not be responsible for it. That Pinellas Park versus Brown makes that clear. Let's see. That's just more information on Pinellas Brown. Then we have Brower v. County of Inyo. The U.S. Supreme Court addressed the issue of deadly force and law enforcement pursuit. In that case, the court held that certain pursuit tactics might result in a claim of a constitutional violation of a seizure by deadly force. So this is the roadblock one where they set up an 18-wheeler around a curve and basically to try and trap that vehicle. Brower v. County of Inyo. Just remember in your face. All right, County of Inyo, it's in your face. You can't put a blockade in someone's face, okay? You can't roadblock. You can't put it in a dangerous position where they're about to make a curve and all of a sudden the 18-wheeler's there. It's in your face and he just hits it. You got to make it clear of what you're doing. Then we move on to deadly force, Tennessee v. Gardner. The use of deadly force to apprehend a person for committing a non-dangerous crime. And it drew a distinction between the act of pursuing and the act of blocking or seizing a person. Basically saying that if you're trying to block them, then that's not good and you are now responsible and liable for what happens to that person. So again, deadly force should not be used to apprehend citizens for minor offenses such as traffic violations. So again, if it's minor, if it's not a forcible felony, aka your occupied burglary, your robbery, your carjacking, you're not allowed to chase them anyway, so you shouldn't be worried about roadblocks and all those things. Again, that's a little bit of Tennessee v. Gardner mixed in there, deadly force. The issue of using a law enforcement vehicle as deadly force is best addressed in specific policy. Then we move on to pursuit and mobilization technique. That's discussed later, so we'll get there in a second. Another issue is the standard for judging whether you are responsible for injury or death caused by pursuit or emergency response. We have County of Sacramento v. Lewis. The U.S. Supreme Court adopted this standard referred to in earlier cases involving force. Officers may be liable if their actions are sufficient to shock the conscience of the court. Basically meaning maybe you were allowed to pursue him. Maybe you were justified in that, and maybe you didn't, you were doing what you did, but you did something that the reasonableness, and this you might remember from law where it wasn't reasonable. No officer really would have done that, and you were being It's a case-by-case basis, so Sacramento v. Lewis is a case-by-case. It is shocking the conscience of the court, just remember that, where you did something so egregious that no other officer or deputy probably would have done that, and what you did was just basically reckless. So remember, Sacramento v. Lewis, you were being reckless, and you're shocking the court because what you did was so egregious and outrageous that they're like, how could he have done this? You're basically screwed. Like chasing a motorcycle, right? You know what I mean? You got to pick and choose. It's like, is it worth it? Obviously, they're balancing on it. Keep that in mind. So then we move on to another pursuit one, which is Scott v. Harris. This is when he pursued for a traffic offense at high speeds. And then he tried to use a pit, but way higher than he was supposed to. What was the result of this one? That the public endangered by the chase could have been protected if Scott and the other officers had just stopped chasing Harris. So basically saying that they were being negligent, where they were basically shocking the court by driving so fast and being so reckless, and then ended up killing this guy. You kind of have a negligence standard for injuries caused, so the Scott case does not give a green light for anything goes approach to pursuit. So just because you're allowed to pursue doesn't mean you could do whatever the hell you want. You can't shock the conscience of the court. You can't do anything egregious. You have to terminate it if you feel like it's not safe, etc. Make sure when you're engaged in a pursuit, you must notify dispatch that you are starting or stopping a pursuit. And then, of course, activate and properly use all emergency equipment during the pursuit, and keep in constant contact with dispatch. Pursuit has several possible conclusions, including the violator stopping voluntarily and the pursuit ending, the violator stopping involuntarily resulting in the violator's apprehension or death, you ending the pursuit without apprehending the violator, permitting the violator to escape, or at least temporarily, the violator crashing, or you crashing. Those are kind of how they end. Then we move into roadblocks. This is in bold. Roadblock, pretty self-explanatory. The use of vehicles, barricades, cones, or any object to block traffic flow partially or completely. Let's see here. That brings us back to County of Inyo face. A roadblock must be, you can use them, but it must be positioned so the violator has sufficient time to stop. AKA, on a straight road, he can see it a quarter mile up and have the option to stop. Is he going to stop? Who knows? But he has to be able to see it so that he doesn't die from it. Tire deflation devices. Many brands of tire deflation devices are available for law enforcement agencies. They all have common characteristics. Hollow spikes that puncture a vehicle's tire and allow air to be released. So that could be a test question. They're hollow, so when they run them over, it keeps that, it might disconnect from the thing, but it'll keep that hollow, like nail, so to speak, in the tire, and then air will go through that hollow section. A track or mat base, and some form of deployment. Then we move into the pit, the pursuit and mobilization technique. You use law enforcement vehicle to apply force to either the rear right, or left side of the violator's vehicle to end the pursuit. You can only use this if you are properly trained and your agency has the policies for it. Let's see, here we go. And that concludes our Chapter 1, Law Enforcement Vehicle Operations. Just kind of to recap here, I really went over all the test questions for this. There really shouldn't be any other ones in there. What you'll see is maybe a mix of the same ones. There could be a couple that I missed, but again, like I like to emphasize for this chapter, a lot of it is common sense. You just might not have known the correct verbiage or words or definitions or terms for those definitions. So just on this test, my main advice would be to put yourself in the car and just work through the question slowly on, okay, if I'm making a right turn, then yeah, the weight, my body, if I'm making a hard right turn, my body's going to shift left because that is the weight transfer, right? Late apex, I'm going to turn late. Forget all the other ones. Correct cornering, that's making a right or left at an intersection. Intersections are the most deadly, and your backing is your most common crashes. All of these are kind of common sense if you put yourself in your car and you just stay confident on the test and you think about it that way. So this is Deputy Z signing off. Good luck on this test, and I'll catch you on the next video.